Hi everyone, it's Kate Milliken. I'm the founder of My Counterpain, and I have been living with MS since 2006. And this is my Counterpain one-on-one conversation with Samantha Guerry. Samantha is a friend of mine who I've met in the MS realm, who has started a site called turnfirst.org. And I want to take this time to ask her about it. Samantha, I'm totally psyched to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the simple question. What is Turn First?
Well, Turn First is a private foundation that's sole mission is to help people who are newly diagnosed with MS. When I was newly diagnosed, there wasn't very much information out there, and we certainly didn't have the internet because that was 1992. I've been at this a long time. And what we found is that people who are newly diagnosed are trying to absorb a lot of information. Early studies by the Pew Foundation and whatnot have shown how much more Americans are going online to get medical information. And the problem is if you go online and type in multiple sclerosis, you're going to get about 15 million hits. And if it's a new term for you, that's just way too much information, and you have no parameters by which you can evaluate what's true, what's not true, what's healthy, what's unhealthy. So we created Turn First to sort of bypass that Google search, if you will, and give doctors a place to send their patients so that they could, and that's what a lot of doctors that are in our realm do. They say, look, I've been able to spend half an hour, if you're lucky, answering your questions, but I know this is a lot to absorb. So instead of going back and going on the internet generally, go to Turn First, spend some time there, and then come back to me with your questions. That provides a foundation that is specific to the newly diagnosed. So someone who has had MS for 30 years is going to have very different needs in terms of information than someone who's diagnosed today. And I think by doing that, it's a more hopeful message and hopefully makes it a little less scary.
So for the people who are newly diagnosed that actually go to the site, what is your hope when they leave the site that they have in kind of their quiver?
Well, they have the facts. We have a whole sort of frequently asked questions. I remember when my father was diagnosed, my mother told me my father had MS. My first question is he going to die? There are a lot of really basic questions that if you've been living with MS a long time, you kind of have learned your way into it. But when it's new for you, you have a lot of basic questions that need to be answered quickly. So we have something called MS 101, which very methodically takes a patient from the moment of diagnosis sort of calmly through, here are the facts, here are the questions you should be asking, here's how to build your medical team, here's how to, do you tell people right now, do you not tell people right now, how to just sort of navigate the personal along with the medical ramifications of a diagnosis like this.
So what's been the impact of Turn First that you've seen as a result of having it out in the online universe?
Well, that's always hard to measure because it is in the universe of the internet, and there are a lot of people who come and go. Over the last couple of years, we've doubled the number of people who come to our site. We have over 5,000 people a year who go through our program online. And we have over 50,000 people in our Facebook community with whom we share information, almost daily about new research that's coming out, great articles about how to live and what affects MS or might not affect MS, and just sharing a lot of information among the community. It gives people an opportunity to share their stories with each other. Or just sort of lurk in the background. But I do get a lot of people who write to me and say, I can't tell you how helpful that was. And just this week I had two families that came to me, and it wasn't just the patient that was diagnosed, but it was his wife, his mother, his sisters. The good thing about having something like this online and having it medically vetted and knowing that it's a safe place is that the whole family can go through our program, and it gives everybody sort of an even place to start so they can really support that patient as they move forward. And that's our hope. That's what we see more than not happening. We get a lot of good feedback from the doctors as well, that that the patients are coming back to them with better questions and getting off to a better start.
That's awesome. And what about for you personally, Samantha, in light of having founded this and run it for a number of years, how would you say that this has affected your own journey with MS personally?
Well, I think the experience for me is the big reason why I started this is as I said, my father was diagnosed in his 40s. I was diagnosed in my early 20s. And, my experience was very different than his. His was chronic progressive. Mine has been relapsing but remitting. We were very different places in our lives at our diagnosis. And I think that it was a very lonely and very difficult time for me because when you're in your 20s and you just, everybody else is going, and having a great
Starting
time.
their lives in some way.
Yeah, it was very isolating in some ways. But as sort of word got out, a lot of people were sent to me as they were diagnosed. It's like, oh, I have a friend who's diagnosed. Can she call you? And I was sort of increasingly frustrated with the lack of good information that patients were getting, even from their doctors. It just was chronically irritating to me. So I found that the big organizations that do a lot of good for the MS community, like the MS Society, at that time really were focused more broadly, and so they weren't providing any resources just for that moment in time of diagnosis. And that's why we started. And so for me, it's really been an opportunity to help make sure that other people don't have to go through what I went through. And in regard to my own journey, I think it's just been a question of giving back and knowing that, in some small way, I've been able to alleviate some of the hard parts of diagnosis for people that I don't even know.
Right. Although on some level, you kind of know what they're going to go through, and you ultimately know how far they have the opportunity to progress, and, literally and figuratively, right? Maybe literally for the worse and figuratively for the better. The other thing too that I love, that I feel like we have a shared commonality on, is the whole idea of allowing people to recognize that there are things that they can do now. Right? To make themselves either feel better or be better.
Right.
I think it's really true.
It's all about hope. For me, Turn First is about setting a hopeful platform because, if you look at the messaging that goes out, again, for fundraising purposes and whatnot, for a lot of the foundations, it's, MS stops people from moving. And, if that's your first message, it's like, what? Just freak you out, But the reality is that over 70% of patients nowadays are diagnosed will remain mobile for the rest of their lives. The medications are very good. We have a whole quiver of options. There are new options coming all the time. They have great research that shows that, the earlier you get onto a disease-modifying agent, the better. And you have choices. And I think that's very empowering. And I think MS can be a very dispiriting and depressing diagnosis. And so it's really important to be empowered early on and to feel like you have choices and you can fight this. And there's a lot of good things that are possible as you move ahead, and that you should live your life and challenge yourself and move on. There are too many people that come to it and they're told either by society or misinformed people or even their doctors, you could be in a wheelchair in a couple of years, you're probably not going to have kids, and that really happens. And I feel like Turn First is an antidote to that. I want people to know their life can go on and they can seize the day and live a great full life with MS.
Awesome. Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you.